king is weeping, not a boy, not a broken man. A king, 2/3 divine, 1/3 mortal, the mightiest being that ever walked the walls of Uruk. And he cannot stop. His best friend is dead. And Gilgamesh, for the first time in his immortal-blooded life, has felt something no army could prepare him for. The cold truth that everything ends, even him, especially him. Welcome, traveler. This is the Myth Wanderer. I stand at the gates of Uruk. The year is somewhere beyond counting, 3, perhaps 4,000 years before your world will call this place Iraq, before the rivers Tigris and Euphrates will shrink, before the desert will swallow these walls whole. Right now, Uruk is the center of everything, the greatest city humanity has ever built, and its king, Gilgamesh, is the greatest king it has ever known. I have seen conquerors, I have witnessed gods, but Gilgamesh is something else entirely. He is 6.5 feet of divine arrogance, son of the goddess Ninsun, blessed by the gods themselves. He has never lost a battle, never broken a sweat that wasn't worth it, never looked at the horizon and thought, I cannot reach that. But here is what the legends don't always tell you about Gilgamesh, the great king. He was insufferable. He exhausted his people. He fought his warriors until their bodies gave out. He imposed himself on the city with the weight of a man who genuinely believed the rules of the universe did not apply to him. And the gods, watching from their celestial seats, agreed something had to change. So they created Enkidu, not to destroy Gilgamesh, to match him. Enkidu was made from clay and divine breath, placed in the wild and raised among animals. He knew no walls, no kings, no ambition. He was pure, raw humanity before civilization got to it. And when Gilgamesh first heard of this wild man who could challenge him, he didn't send an army. He sent a woman named Shamhat, because the gods knew, and Gilgamesh knew, that the fastest way to bring a wild man into the world of men is to give him a reason to love it. 7 days. That is how long Enkidu spent with Shamhat at the edge of the wild. And when he turned back to find his animal companions, the gazelles scattered, the wolves ran. The creatures he had lived beside his entire life looked at him and saw something foreign. He had become human. And so Enkidu walked toward Uruk, carrying with him the grief of a man who has just lost the only world he ever knew, and the curiosity of one stepping into a completely new one. He arrived during a festival. The crowd parted, because Enkidu was enormous and wild, and clearly not from anywhere near here. And then Gilgamesh came. I hold my breath watching this, because what happens next is not a battle. Not exactly. It is two forces of nature recognizing each other across a crowded street. They fight. Of course they fight. Two beings like this, what else would they do? It goes on longer than any fight I have ever witnessed. The walls of Uruk shake, the crowd goes silent, and then, nothing. A draw. Two men breathing hard, staring at each other, and then Gilgamesh does something no one in Uruk has ever seen him do. He laughs and pulls Enkidu to his feet. From this moment, everything changes. The king who had never needed anyone now has a brother. The wild man who had never had a home now has one. Uruk breathes again. Gilgamesh cannot be still. Even with Enkidu beside him, even with a city that worships him, the king looks at the horizon and sees a challenge, the cedar forest. In the mountains far to the west, a forest of impossible beauty stretches toward the sky, ancient cedar trees taller than anything in Mesopotamia. And guarding this forest, Humbaba, a monster placed there by the god Enlil himself. Terrifying, primordial. The roar of him can strip bark from trees at 100 paces. Gilgamesh wants to go. Enkidu knows this is madness. Why? Enkidu asks. We have everything. Because, says Gilgamesh, when we are dead, they will say our names, but only if we do something worth remembering. I watch Enkidu's face in this moment. He knows Gilgamesh is wrong about the reasons. He also knows he cannot let him go alone. And so they go. The journey to the cedar forest takes weeks. I walk beside them through desert heat and mountain cold, watching a friendship sharpen itself against every mile. They argue, they sleep under the same stars. They speak in the dark about things kings are not supposed to be afraid of. Humbaba is everything the legends promised. His face is a chaos of twisted features, his voice a physical force. The trees themselves seem to cringe when he roars. The battle is brutal and beautiful, and I will not pretend it is clean. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu together are something the universe had not quite accounted for. They defeat Humbaba. And standing over the fallen guardian, Gilgamesh feels it again, that intoxicating rush. I am untouchable. I am eternal. He does not yet understand that this moment is the peak, that everything after this is descent. The goddess Ishtar sees Gilgamesh returning victorious and decides she wants him. She appears before him in all her divine radiance and makes her offer. Gilgamesh, still riding the high of Humbaba's defeat, still armored in the arrogance of a man who has never truly lost, says no. Worse than no. He mocks her. He lists her previous lovers, the ones she destroyed, the horse, the lion, the shepherd. He stands before a goddess and tells her she is not worth his time. I have seen anger in my travels across time and myth. But divine rage is different. It is cold. It is patient. It is certain. Ishtar goes to her father Anu and demands the bull of heaven, a creature that, with each snort, opens sinkholes large enough to swallow 300 men. Anu sends it. The battle for Uruk is chaos. People fall into the earth. The city screams, but Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull. Together, again, unstoppable, again. Enkidu tears off the bull's hindquarters and throws them at Ishtar's feet. In any other story, this is where the celebration begins. But the gods are watching, and the gods are angry. Not at Gilgamesh. You cannot punish a king so beloved. Not yet. They look at Enkidu, and they make their decision. Enkidu falls ill. There is no wound, no battle. He simply begins to leave. The gods have decreed it, and the decree of gods moves through a body like water through stone, slowly, inevitably, reshaping everything it touches. 12 days. I stand in the corner of this room and I do not move, because this is the scene that breaks the epic open, not the monsters, not the divine rage. This, a great man lying on a bed, and his greater friend unable to do a single thing. Enkidu speaks near the end. He is afraid. He has dreamed of the house of dust, the Mesopotamian underworld, where the dead sit in darkness, eating clay, wearing feathers, kings and priests alike, no exceptions. Gilgamesh cannot answer him. For the first time, the words are gone. Enkidu dies at dawn. Gilgamesh does not hold a royal funeral. He does not give speeches. He sits beside Enkidu's body for 7 days and 7 nights, refusing to let them bury his friend, waiting, perhaps genuinely believing, that Enkidu will wake up. He doesn't. And when the grief finally breaks through, it breaks everything. Gilgamesh leaves Uruk. He takes off his crown, his armor, his royal garments. He wraps himself in animal skins and walks into the wilderness, the same wilderness Enkidu came from. And he runs, not toward anything, away from the one truth he cannot outrun. He is going to die too. The journey to Utnapishtim, the only mortal ever granted immortality by the gods, is the most impossible journey in all of mythology. Gilgamesh crosses mountains where no living man has walked. He passes through tunnels of pure darkness that would shatter a lesser mind. He reaches the waters of death which kill on contact. He crosses them anyway, and he finds Utnapishtim, who is ordinary, an old man, calm, almost disappointing. Utnapishtim looks at this wild, grief-wrecked, magnificent wreck of a king and says something that echoes across 4,000 years. When the gods created humanity, they assigned death to humanity, but life they retained in their own keeping. There is no secret. There is no trick. Immortality was never on the table. Utnapishtim takes pity on him anyway and tells him of a plant deep at the bottom of the sea that restores youth, not immortality, but something. Gilgamesh dives to the ocean floor. He finds the plant, tears it from the rocks, holds it in bleeding hands. He starts the long journey home. He stops to rest beside a pool. While he sleeps, a snake slithers out of the water, smells the plant, and takes it. The snake sheds its skin as it retreats, renewed, young again. Gilgamesh wakes up, looks at the empty rock where the plant had been, and sits down on the ground. He weeps. Again, but differently this time. I follow Gilgamesh back to Uruk. He doesn't speak for a long time, and then, standing before the city's great walls, he turns to his boatman, the one mortal who made this journey with him, and says, "Look at the walls of Uruk, touch the stones. They will outlast us. They already have." He built these walls. He built this city, and for the first time he sees them not as extensions of his ego, but as the thing he leaves behind, the only immortality available to men. Not a life that never ends, a life that matters before it does. I have traveled to the beginning of human storytelling and watched the oldest hero in recorded history learn the hardest thing there is to learn, that the weight of forever is too much for any one man to carry, and that loving someone, really loving them, changes you in ways you cannot unfeel. Even kings weep. Even the mightiest among us runs. Even the greatest story ever told is, underneath everything, just a man who lost his friend and never quite recovered. Until next time, traveler, this is The Myth Wanderer.